As I begin making preparations for the end of the first campaign that I've been DMing, I'm also in the process of preparing for the beginning of the second campaign. I have a great group of players and have found my DMing groove, so I thought I'd share some of my experience with anybody who could use it. Taking up most of my time actually in preparing for campaign 2 is an opening guide I've been making for myself and for my players, a resource we'll use to set up the story and characters during session 0. And in this guide, I have a list of rules, stipulations, and ideas for character building. This list is a very succinct culmination of all of my mistakes, my experiences, and hard lessons I learned during my time as DM for Direwood. And I'd like to share it with whoever will listen to give them a leg up in creating a character for whatever adventure they're about to embark on that their DM and entire table will love. So let's start from the beginning. You've got a campaign starting soon. You're sitting down and you have D&D Beyond, Roll20, pen and paper, whatever resource you'll be using to get your thoughts down. Doesn't really matter. You can pick a race, class, subclass, theme, name, whatever you'd like first. But I typically start with a backstory before I dive into the mechanics of my character. And it's within your backstory that you'll actually do your DM and your whole table a lot of favors, not your class or list of spells and abilities. So, starting with your backstory, here's a simple checklist of items I think are really important in ensuring you, your DM, and even your fellow players have a great time interacting with the character you're creating. Number 1, your character must be an adventurer. Now, I know this seems obvious, like painfully obvious, but I assure you the meaning of this statement is really easily missed. I wish I could go back and tell myself when I was building my first character, like, hey, they need to be an adventurer. Because being an adventurer in Dungeons & Dragons means taking risks, fighting monsters, people, creatures beyond imagination, negotiating peace between kingdoms, stepping out of your comfort zone, and generally putting yourself in dangerous situations. If your character isn't willing to do these things, well, they're not really fit for a D&D campaign. Playing a cautious character is fine, it really is. It can be really great for roleplay. But that character still has to be willing to relent and do the adventuring. I've seen several characters that are presented with a plot hook and say, no, that sounds way too dangerous, which can be fine, sometimes it is. But more often than not, what that character is actually doing is derailing everything, ruining hours of prep for the DM, or perhaps they're left behind because the rest of the party wants to go do the thing. And at that point, well, either that player is stuck waiting for everybody else to finish, or it's time to make a new character. So the point of this first item is really give your character a very compelling reason to be an adventurer and put themselves at risk. Even if that just means they're super open, they're daring, they're adventurous. It could be as simple as that. Number 2, your character must be willing to work with a party. Now I know this one again seems really obvious, but not paying close attention to this can cause a lot of disruption at the table. Lone wolf characters can be super cool, super badass, fun to play. A character that is slow to trust others can make for some really meaningful character interactions and choices over the course of a campaign. But playing this character means walking a fine line between interesting and asshole. Because if the character you have in mind is the type to go completely against what the party wants to do, or steal from other party members, or run ahead of the party on their own, or selfishly loot as soon as combat is over instead of checking on their comrades, scrap the character. I know that sounds harsh, but only in very specific instances could any of these things be cool. Most of the time, these kinds of actions or behaviors are just going to annoy other players and your DM. This isn't to say you can't play a character like this, you totally can, but if you're going to, be prepared for that character to grow and change their ways over time, because otherwise, nobody's going to have a fun time at the table playing with that character in that party. Number 3, give your character a really solid weakness or fear. Now, a lot of people really overlook this. They see that box on their character sheet and they go, okay, cool, I'm afraid of the dark, whatever, and they never play to it or they'll never touch on it. And frankly, you could be afraid of the dark. That could be a really good character trait. It doesn't matter too much what your character's fear or weakness is. It could be something as simple as a fear of spiders, or something as complex of, a fear of dark, confined spaces. Whatever it may be, have a fear or a weakness you can play with, and have an origin for this fear or weakness in your backstory. This opens up a world of possibility for your DM and the whole table, really. These kinds of fears and weaknesses can initiate some really awesome moments or hilarious moments, like your sorcerer who's afraid of spiders, screaming and running out of a cave, hurling firebolts left and right because there were too many spiders in the cave. Or it could be the catalyst for a really heartfelt moment, where your character tries to overcome their fear of confined spaces by crawling into one to save another player character. A fear or a weakness doesn't have to be a detriment to your character. It doesn't have to be something that makes your character worse. They can be an opportunity. Number 4, consider having a connection with another character prior to the start of the campaign. This is something I've actually personally seen do wonders for characters of all kinds, especially new players. Perhaps your mercenary rogue did a job once with the party's ranger, or your paladin once aided the temple the cleric once called home. It can even be a connection as close as your character being a sibling or cousin or childhood best friend of another character. Work with your DM and another player to build some connection into your backstories. This will make the roleplay at the beginning of the campaign as the party forms so much easier, as well as give your character a good reason to stick with the party in the first place. Often, some of the most tricky RP and some of the most campaign-defining moments happen very early on as the party is forming, where roles are established and friendships are made. If you have something like that already set, that's going to make the beginning so much easier and so much more fun for everybody. Number 5, include some locations and potential NPCs in your backstory. Now, admittedly, this part is mostly going to be for your DM, but it can have a huge impact on the campaign and your character and even other characters later on. We all know that the DM has a lot to keep track of and do. Making sure that there's something special for each and every player in the campaign can be really tough. So including already built and fleshed out NPCs and locations, possibly ones that your DM provided for you, in your backstory not only gives your DM material to work with, saves them a few hours of prep, but it also gives you, the player, way more ways to dive into the head of your character and invest yourself in the world the DM is presenting for you. This one I'd strongly advise working with your DM on before the campaign starts, whether it be building these elements together or just being willing to accept and take on changes the DM might recommend after you've given them your backstory. Some back and forth can go a really long way. And number 6, one long-term goal, one short-term goal. It's really easy to finish a character, and I've done this myself, have that character and the stats all fleshed out, only to arrive at a table realizing you have no idea what your character wants to do. Coming into the game with goals already planned for your character makes jumping into the game so much easier for everybody, especially if you've worked out those goals with your DM. It's also really important to have multiple goals, or at least one long-term goal and one short-term goal. The short-term goal could be something as simple as finding a party to work with. Then, right there, you have a good reason to stick with the party. You sought them out. Or it could be something like wanting to visit a specific location or find a certain person. Your DM should usually pretty easily be able to weave things like that into whatever story they're conjuring up behind the curtains. It is important, however, that your goals aren't the be-all and end-all of your character. I learned the hard way as a DM that characters with very specific goals, achieving those goals, often leads to those characters being done, finished. Time for a new character in the middle of a campaign. Oops. The point is, have at least one loose long-term goal. Something like bringing peace to a country, because maybe you end the war, but there could always still be more resistance or more things to mop up. Or protecting someone, because as long as they need protection, your work isn't done. Or just simply learning more about something like an ancient artifact, because so long as your DM sticks with it, there's always something new to learn. So long as it's something that isn't finite, it'll do. So these 6 items are some of the most important criteria my players will likely be working with when they create their characters for the next campaign. But there are a few more stipulations and warnings, so to speak, I'd propose to any player in any campaign trying to make the most amicable character they can. Firstly, be really careful about UA and homebrewed content. You can find some really awesome stuff online, and Unearthed Arcana often has a lot of really cool classes and new stuff, but a lot of the stuff online isn't official, and Unearthed Arcana and online, like third-party homebrewed stuff, it's often not very well playtested and has really great potential for it being either very overpowered or very underpowered, both of which, not fun. That being said, I have extended the invitation to my players to seek out whatever they like, so long as they check in with me first before implementing it. If your DM extends this offer to you, I'd highly suggest taking them up on it. Homebrew spells, classes, and races can make the experience all the more unique and fun. But you have to be willing to keep an open mind to make changes if your table or DM decides a change is necessary. It happened to me as a DM. One of my players came to me with a homebrewed class and race, and I thought, this looks okay, it looks cool. And then he started playing it, and within a few weeks, the rest of the party was like, wow, this is really overpowered, my dude. So if you're able to go in with non-official content, cool, but you really got to keep an open mind for the sake of the rest of the players and your DM. And finally, always, always, always remember that at the end of the day, it's still just a game. It's true, don't get me wrong. For a lot of people, including myself, it's a really special game, and it means a lot more than just rolling dice and killing monsters. But a tabletop RPG is not worth risking your friendships over. Just be mindful when you're creating this character that this character will be interacting with a lot of other characters and NPCs that your friends, your group, your DM have also spent time, presumably, and care creating. All I'd ask in this regard is that you pay them, your DM and your entire table, the same respect for that you're hoping that they pay you. Thank you so much for watching, and I really do hope that this helped a few people who are in the middle of creating their next character. Maybe you're new to the game, in which case, welcome, glad to have you. Or maybe you're just looking to up your game and really wow everybody at the table. Either way, if you have any questions at all about a character you're building or about anything I've said in this video, if you think I missed something important or you just want to make fun of me, please feel free to do so in the comments below. Also be sure to leave a like and subscribe because I want to see just how big my ego can get. And finally, be sure to follow me on Twitch where I'm DMing Adventures in Direwood every Thursday. The link will be below in the description at the very top. Hopefully I'll see you there. If not, until next time, take care.